Graham. Thank you.
Cool, thanks very much, Donald. Yes, as he says, I've got no slides. This is going to be very much off the cuff, but that also means that I'm opening it up for everybody to please come and have your say anytime. This is not a I present and then you come ask questions later. Please put your hand up in the middle. I'm also going to ask, we're still quite light because I think a lot of people are still asleep. So everybody who's in that last row there, and that last row there, who's ignoring me, Benny, can you guys all move to the center section so that I'm not like looking in all directions, and let's just have a bit of a, get everybody a little bit more cozy so we can chat. Obviously, as before, please come up to the microphone if you want to say something, but yes, as I said, any time that's through the presentation, I'm happy to take questions or comments. And yeah, this is a little bit unprepared. I've got a few points to touch on, but let's get going. So the topic is around the next gen of internet plumbers, or the next generation of plumbers. And to some extent, I think this is something that's come up in a number of different discussions over the past few years. We're all struggling a bit to find people to work in our organizations, technically, to keep things going, to fix things, to build new things. I was reading news articles just last night where CETA, the state IT agency, is being wrapped over the knuckles by Parliament because 50% of their vacancies in their organization are unfilled because they can't find staff who are willing to work for them, and that leaves them in a position where they can't provide this IT services that the government needs, and they're not delivering. And then we as end users go, well, why is government not delivering? And government turns around and says, well, I'm in a court and I can't get a laptop to go into court to hear the case that I need to hear. And then they turn around and go, CETA, why haven't you given me the laptop? And then CETA goes, but we can't. So this is clearly a problem that's throughout not just our industry, but throughout the whole ecosystem of technology. And where do we go? Where do we want to go to solve this? So, I mean, we often speak about the idea of being internet plumbers, and it's kind of used as a bit of a joke. It's like, oh, we're just the plumbers. But there's actually a lot of similarity between the things that we are doing and those of many of the other artisanal trades, electricians and plumbers and all of those kinds of things. And I think that for a number of years, working in IT-related fields has tried to be played off as something super glamorous and super fancy and like elitist and whatever. But the reality is that the vast majority of us are doing something that's not spectacular, but nonetheless incredibly important. And for me, that means perhaps aligning ourselves more with the rest of the engineering industries. It's not terribly sexy being a civil engineer and designing bridges. But if we didn't have bridges, if we didn't have people who could go there and pour concrete to make a bridge, and we didn't have engineers who could design a bridge that didn't fall down, our world would be a very difficult place. So none of those are sexy jobs. And I think that we've tried for possibly too long to portray our industry as somehow more sexy than a civil engineer, or more sexy than the guy who designs the sewer system or the sewer pump station, or the person who designs the water treatment plant. But we are foundational infrastructure. We've reached the point now where we are foundational infrastructure to our society as a whole. And so maybe just embracing the plumber thing and understanding it is where we need to be. But the other side of it is that in general, across artisanal skills, there's also been a general lack of people getting excited about that. There's big problems in, for example, the electrician industry, where there aren't enough electricians to put in the wiring for all of the buildings and structures that are being built, but everybody wants power, they want solar installed, they don't want their building to burn down when they're using their power. But nobody actually wants to be an electrician. Nobody wants to learn about how you lay out cabling so that it doesn't catch on fire. Because that's boring and it's not sexy and it's not, you're not on TikTok and you're not earning 1 million views. So we have problems that are specific to us. I think we have problems that are in parallel with other artisanal industries. And so where do we go? What is the thing that we should be dealing with to try and improve the situation? Any suggestions, any thoughts, any comments at that point before I go on? You want to jump up to the mic quick? Okay, agreement, yes. Okay, so does everybody agree that you've experienced trouble getting people to work in your organizations? Anybody who hasn't had trouble hiring people into your organizations? Okay, go ahead. Name and affiliation.
Internet Plumbers, a BSc computer science student. It is my fun. Okay, now it's on. What I've also noticed is people like to do the glamorous stuff, and one of the challenges in our world has been that in the past, I'm going to say 20 odd years, if not more, universities became the thing instead of focusing on it being just the top of the pyramid. Or if you look at Maslow's pyramid, the university should be the top of the pyramid. Underneath that, your technicons, followed by the technical colleges, which is basically where you need to have most of your people working on. But there's been such a focus on you need to get to university, that's going to be the big paying job, that we have too many useless university students being turned out and useless degrees. And it adds to this problem that there is no technical, no artisanal skills anymore. And it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse until we address the, I'm going to say, not the community, the human nature of wanting to be going to university, selling that dream of you've got a university degree, you're going to get a big job, you get a big fancy paying job. That's not going to turn out. I started with a university degree and I needed to go to the bottom to start working it up. And that's what people don't understand. They don't want to understand because I did a university degree, that's where we need to go. Universities is a sausage factory lately. Thank you.
Cool, thanks Hendrik. So comments on that. I mean, you started off by saying the university is the top of the pyramid and everything down. I mean, I think fundamentally that's sort of the start of the flawed thinking. It should be more that university is the one lane and Technikon is the next lane and the next lane. And I mean, there's plenty of evidence that you don't need to be a university student to be rich. And I think to some extent, the market is actually correcting that. People are coming out of university with expensive degrees and in certain countries with massive debts associated with those degrees, struggling to get work, struggling with endless debt, and not actually becoming financially well off. And so there is, I think, an understanding that maths doesn't math anymore. But I mean, exactly to your point, you still said the university is the top of the pyramid and everybody aspires to be at the top of the pyramid. And as long as universities can carry on raking in willing students who are willing to pay the money and to claim that they are the top of the pyramid, it's kind of, it's a self-fulfilling cycle. But I agree very much on artisanal. I mean, in our particular industry, what pains me on a regular occasion is walking into a data center and seeing that there is no or very little artisanal ability to do wiring inside a data center cabinet that has any sense of artisanal. It's like plug it in here, and just like toss the rest of the loose stuff at the cabinet and hope it lands somewhere. And that's artisanal skill, knowing how to do that, but also understanding why that's important. Because you plug in and you walk away. Cool, the service is working. And some poor sucker has to come at 3 a.m. in the morning and go and figure out why it broke. Then you start to understand why it's worth doing it properly. But there's so little incentive to do it properly the first time. And from a management perspective, I often see there's so little incentive coming down. The incentive is get it done and get out. The incentive is not do it well because you will get a bonus, or do it well because it's good for the organization. Plug it in, does the light come on, get back to the office and carry on with the next job.
Yeah, Simon Mayoe from Wyok. I think for me, the question is actually for the people in the room. How much effort are we making to have the young guys on board? Yesterday, I think when we were starting, there was a question on how many students are here, and I saw only one hand. And the question is, after us who are going to operate these networks, who are going to do the job. And so how much awareness are we creating? And when we create awareness, where is our emphasis? I think when people are coming into the industry, they want to jump direct into the routers and switches and configure. The last time I saw, when we were doing a couple of AFNOG stuff, there was one member who was very interesting. While systems could not work, the network could work, he could concentrate and say, there's a cable which is introducing noise, and he could trace the cable into the port. Are we able to do that? So basically my question is, how much effort and awareness are we creating? These arrangements, we need to have more students than us who've been in the industry, like going forward. Otherwise, when we retire, we'll not have the internet, and we'll be blaming people who are running the internet.
Hi. Sorry, I'm Donald Jolly from Zanog. It's actually a great question, Simon, because I'm going to answer that from a Zanog perspective, is that we find it very difficult to reach out to the universities and find the right people in the university. And so this is a request to those people that are online as well. If you're from universities within South Africa, reach out to us. Those people that are interested in attending these, we can find ways for the students to attend. And so, yeah, reach out to us. But I think also, as generally within organizations, are there ways that people can have meaningful internships? I used to work for eThekwini municipality. We had an intern program. There was no leadership to mentor those people. So it didn't really mean much. That's just one of the examples.
Ed from Zeranog as well. Donald covered half of what I want to say, but a much simpler way for us to get more fresh blood into our industry is, all of us know people around us who have some form of an interest in our industry. Grab them by the ears, drag them to one of these events. It costs basically nothing. Like, if everyone in this room brings one person and we get a quarter of those people who end up sticking to our industry, it probably would actually make a MRSA difference, because like that would make, like, okay, I don't know how, I'm not going to count everyone in the room, but if we base it off everyone who's checked in for this event so far, that's 170 people. If we get a quarter of that in new people, that gives us like 30, 40 other new people. It'll be changing for our industry. It'll make that we can retire, because there's lots of grey beards in here. So Yeah, simple things like that. Just bring them along to event, even the small events. Get them excited. I think one of the big problems is the youngsters don't appreciate the face-to-face like we do. I think that might just be because many of us were lonely people at some point, but yeah, they don't know the pleasures we get out of these events. So just drag them by the ears, bring someone new to the community. It's the simplest way.
Hi Graham, Rian Frost, Metro Fiber. From my perspective, I would say it's boiling down to two things. And I believe this is also what has briefly been touched by a number of speakers already. First of all, lack of awareness. And I do acknowledge and appreciate that events such as this, ZNOC, is indeed helping. But what's quite interesting for me is that when I've spoken to a number of vendors, they were not aware of, as example, what ZNOC is about. Okay, granted, that's from a vendor perspective, but the way I'm looking at that is awareness across the board. And then in line of that is going to be, let's just say your example about the electrician, or if you really want to go down that path of electrical engineer, is the lack of interest. For me, all of this is starting with awareness. If you're going to become aware of something, then yes, following from that, you might be interested in that. And I'm not going to go into the detail about university degree and all of that. That's, in my opinion, besides the point. It's just going to be starting with awareness. And thereafter, if you're interested, yeah, then get more involved. And the fact that you can learn a lot from other individuals, that is speaking for itself. So the work that ZNOC is doing and other, I'm just going to say, representatives in the industry, that's helping already. The question just is, how can we do more? What is missing? What do we need to change to be able to improve the awareness, especially with the youngsters out there? From their perspective, I don't think they have a clue what is happening. So it's starting with that specific point.
Cool,
Thank
thanks very much. Wil jy weer praat?
Yes, but this time as Hendrik Versace from Universal Systems Envisage Cloud Solutions. So from that perspective, as a business owner, I've seen that I'm in need of system administrators. System administrators is seen as the most boring job possible out there because everybody wants to be, guess what? DevOps. DevOps is not supposed to be a job description, but besides that issue. The experience that I have found in my work and in my business is that people want to, or the youngsters that I've tried to engage, wants to look at these hyperscalers, especially that yellow-orange one, and they want to be that certification because that is the thing that entices them. That is the thing that has the most marketing skills on it, and they want to be developers. They want to be DevOps. They don't want to look at just how a system, and a system administrator needs to know how that system works at the bottom of it, that artisanal type of skills, just in a different way getting applied. Again, we need to look at how we can get out of the marketing, the big names, the big things, and just work onto that artisanal system administrating skills as an example.
Sean from the internet. I think we've had this conversation before, 2 years ago at ZAPF. I think built on what Ed said as well about just bringing youngsters in. One of the problems we face in South Africa is we have a lot of youngsters leaving school who don't have the resources to go and study or become anything. So there's a massive untapped market of people who may not have an interest in networking or engineering, but need a job and would happily work for a company on sort of a paid internship to learn that skill and become that person. And I think it's a larger responsibility, especially among small ISPs, to maybe identify and find people like that and say, look, you're 18, you just finished school, you don't know what to do with your life, you don't come from an economic background where you can afford to go and study anything, so come and work for us. The first year or two might be peanuts, but it's better than nothing. and we'll teach you the skill, but employing them with the view of they're there to learn, not they're an employee on day one, needs to be able to hit the ground running cable, understanding all the complexities of fiber, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that'll go a long way towards recruiting a young user base who are learning that skill, bringing those people, as it says, grab them by the ears, and bring them to these events and give them a broader exposure to what else is going on in the industry, and then they can figure out in which direction they want to go, but at least they're in the door and like learning a skill and getting paid at the same time.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you that there, in South Africa particularly, there's a massive untapped pool of resources. I think that we struggle, in a sense. I mean, I remember when I was at university, I would do work for no pay because I was in an educational environment. And you suddenly go into the job environment and you do learning for a little bit of pay and you feel like you've been screwed over, basically. And somewhere in the middle, there's a space that people, like you say, an internship. People see an internship as, I mean, possibly some of this comes from American kind of their context of what an internship is, but a lot of people see internships as quite degrading and quite humiliating and not up to the standard of a real job. And that's concerning because they don't have the skills to do a real job. They are still students, but at the same time, they've left school, they're not in a university, so there's this kind of this mindset thing of what are they doing? They're doing a job, therefore they must be paid. And I don't know what the answer to that problem is, but I see that as when I mean, we've got interns, and many of them are already going, well, I'm paid to be here, let me do some real stuff. You're like, no, you just paid some money so you don't starve, you are learning. And we don't have that linked up correctly in people's mindsets. Also, then going back a bit to what Ed and what a few other people said about sort of dragging people in. At university, they might have a peripheral interest, but I think we've maybe even lost them a long time before that. I've got young, under 10-year-old children at the moment, and we read bedtime stories and all the rest of it. And you open a bedtime story, and it's a fireman doing this, and a plumber doing that, and a whatever, and a bricklayer doing this. Now, the reality is that children of ours, with our economic ability, because of our kind of work that we're doing, it's very unlikely that any of them are going to ever become bricklayers. But that kind of media has been entrenched in school, in children's stories for 200-300 years. Now, I'm quite convinced that that didn't arrive there by accident. There was probably some people who were from some kind of industrial background who said, well, if we write children's stories about these things, then it'll spark their interest very young, and it'll evolve into something. And I think that we as a technology industry have largely failed to do any of that kind of true grassroots seed planting. There's, I mean, where's Hendrik gone? Hendrik was mentioning about the Orange hyperscaler. I mean, that's the kind of organization who would easily put out a book and plant sort of subtle hints about their particular product set into a children's book. But there isn't anything that kind of does it on a neutral basis. And are we actually even piquing people's interest to the possibility that this could be a job? Because they're not aware of us, they don't know that we exist, they don't know how the YouTube video gets into their cell phone. And so even if they are unemployed, they never even bother to come and find out if there's a job to make YouTube videos get into cell phones, because they're not aware, there's no seed that's been planted. And so maybe as a last question and any other comments, what was the thing that first planted the seed in your head that you can trace back as the origin of your interest in this industry? The thing that I can trace back to is outside the front gates of my childhood home, there was a Telkom yellow pillar, one of the little junction boxes. And about once every 2 or 3 months, a little Telkom trokkie would arrive, and a guy would climb out with all of his toolbox and his crimping tools and all of the rest of it, and he would be splicing and joining and doing all sorts of stuff. And I would spend hours and hours peering through the fence, watching the little Telkom technician and his Telkom trokkie, and working in his splice joint. Now, by today's technology, that's a very boring thing. It's a simple copper wire pair splice joint. It's nothing technologically advanced. But there was a seed that happened there that has evolved into something. So, what was the seed that planted for you guys?
My name is Francois from Internet SA. Just have a comment and opinion on the previous topic that we were busy with. I think most of us in this room, and as a junior in this networking space as well, most of us in this room are unsung heroes. None of us have those million followers on TikTok like you mentioned, and I think it's a generational thing. I think the new generation, I'm part of them, but I think the new generation want those million followers. They want the eyes on them. They want to be seen, they want to be heard. Well, I don't think any of us in this room actually get that satisfaction. Like you said, nobody knows how that YouTube video ends up on their phone. So to some degree, I think we're creating part of that problem. The fact that we are getting that YouTube video on the phone, we're getting that TikTok live. Everybody wants to be part on the platform that we provide, but nobody understands how it got there. So I think that awareness, if we can spread the awareness of how that came to be, the connections that have been made along the road, the network that has been built, the fiber that's in the ground, the microwaves traveling all that data. I think if people can understand and appreciate that, we might get more people with a certain itch that needs to be scratched. I think for most of us in this room, we have that itch. We want to get people connected. We want to get people be able to grow. There's so much free information on the internet. We connect those people together to use that information. So if we can just spread the awareness to get them to be able to understand what we're doing, maybe they can grow that itch as well. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. Donald, you need to tell me if I need to...
So one last question or comment, and then I think we need to...
Cool, all right.
Hi there, I'm Hein de Lange. Your question about what piqued your interest in the industry, and my mother would be very proud of me saying this, and my brother knows the story. But it must have been early 90s, had a little x86 computer with DOS and a couple of games, and I don't know what I was doing, but I clearly did something wrong, and I was grounded, and my mother took away all my games. So here I had DOS 3.0, or 3.3, and no games and a computer. So I had nothing to do with this, and I could do nothing with this. So I wrote myself a little menu to play my games a little bit faster. And that's what piqued my interest in the industry. So a little bit of nonsense there. But also just quick, back to the thing, what gets people to join the industry, and I guess the lack of engineers. We had lots of intern programs, and we had people coming in from varsity, and they still had to be interns because they weren't able to do anything really. And we often gave them very menial tasks. But I went to varsity, I learned a lot. I thought I knew everything when I finished there. I went to the industry, I realized I didn't. But instead of someone just giving me a task, I had an apprentice, I guess. And I learned a lot more from being an apprentice. And someone not giving me anything to do, just said, look, observe, watch. And then learn via osmosis, I guess. And I think we don't have that. We always have someone, we've got 100 switches for someone to prepare. Give that to the intern, send him to the dungeon, and he must just be there until he finishes that. And they don't really learn anything. So I think if you do get an intern, just, you've alluded to this, let them learn from you rather than just let them waste away. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the computer experience, there's some child-rearing wisdom that I got fed a couple of years back. It's not a bad thing for kids to be bored. Take the TV away, ground them. It's not it's a punishment, but it also just serves to like get them to switch gears and do something else. Maybe they'll go outside and build a sandcastle, and they'll become a civil engineer, or maybe they'll start writing software because they've got nothing else to keep them entertained. So yeah, it's not a bad thing. Taryn.
Hi everyone, my name is Taryn from Your Fiber. Just an idea I had. We put a lot of time and effort into setting up conferences and regional events. Why don't we look at doing a roadshow, regional roadshow events, where we target universities and we spread awareness about platforms like this?
The universities not want us in there. Yeah, universities are a strange creature now. They've become, like someone said, a sausage machine. And if you don't fit into the sausage machine model, and I think they also get harassed so much by corporates who are trying to get students out that they don't seem to be that interested anymore. I think it's, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. But Donald, do you want to?
We need to move on.
Yeah, we need to step on to the next thing. Thanks very much, everybody. And yeah, we can certainly carry on the conversation outside in the break.